Alright, so I know I promised that I was going to be doing a lot more 10 years later videos in February because there were so many March albums, and I didn't. I have been very busy with a lot of things, and so that kind of took my attention away from videos for a bit, so I apologize for that. But I'm going to try to do these March 10 years later videos relatively fast. In fact, I might do most of this year's 10 years later videos pretty quickly just because there's so many that I want to do. I'll try not to crunch. Hopefully I'll be able to get them out in time. If I don't, I apologize, but I'm going to do what I can. So with that said, welcome back to 10 years later, the series where I talk about albums from the 2010s that were either impactful to me, impactful to music in general, very popular, or just worth revisiting 10 years later for good or bad reasons. And as you can tell from the title, the album that we'll be talking about today is the 2011 Lupe Fiasco record, Lasers. Lupe Fiasco is a Chicago rapper who first rose to prominence in 2006 with his debut album Lupe Fiasco's Food and Liquor. He grew even bigger when Superstar, the lead single off his 2007 follow-up Lupe Fiasco's The Cool, peaked in the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100. This was the follow-up to that album, yes, a whole 4 years later, and it had another huge hit single in The Show Goes On, which also peaked in the top 10 on Billboard. Perhaps on the strength of that single, this album also became Lupe's first and only album to hit #1 on the Billboard 200. Now, I'm not too familiar with Lupe's music, but I know he's a very respected artist, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that had The Show Goes On bumping everywhere when I was in middle school. That track alone was kind of what led me to this album. It's a 12-track, 47-minute record with a bevy of huge features. With how respected Lupe is and with some of the album's mixed reception as well as Lupe's own dissatisfaction with it, I wanted to give it a shot and see if it was a 2011 hidden gem. Unfortunately, it isn't. The album kicks off with a few tracks that give me a good idea of what to expect going into things. Letting Go has a great message about Lupe's struggles with his record label and with the industry, but I do see why so many people have issues with a song like this. The beat is bouncy enough, but the chorus is enough to kill the song entirely. Lupe's passion and flow in the verse just doesn't translate well to a catchy chorus, and that hook gets stale pretty fast. And it's disappointing how little Sarah Green is used on the song too. Words I Never Said does see Lupe going deep into political messages about war and racism in a song that's become notable and notorious at the same time. On one hand, the song's anti-government lyrics have actually made it the theme song to the big internet group Anonymous, and on the other hand, Lupe notably performed a 30-minute version of the song in Washington, D.C. on the night of Barack Obama's second inauguration, and he was notably removed from the stage for refusing to move on to the next song and stop rapping these anti-Obama lyrics that he spits on this track. All that aside, the song is certainly admirable, and Lupe's passionate performance is worth remembering, even if the lyrics are very controversial, and I'm not really in love with the reverb-heavy production and the mixing on Skylar Grey's chorus. There are a few surprising scattered high points though, some that work in spite of themselves. Till I Get There does a better job as an anti-label song, mostly because it sees Lupe flowing very nicely over a pretty bouncy piano instrumental, and while the chorus doesn't blow me away, it works better for this track than the opener's chorus does. Then there's the iconic The Show Goes On, which Lupe himself admitted isn't even his record, it's more like the label's track. It's ironic though that for one, he handed the label an anti-label song that they could market for the radio, and two, that this is one of the best songs on the album. It's one of the few tracks that makes a poppy sound work, and I find Lupe's interpolation of Modest Mouse's Float On to be well integrated. This was actually one of the first songs that taught me about what interpolating was. I remember at one point being the kid that was like, bro, he's just using the chorus to float on, like what? But now I hear it and I'm honestly kind of okay with it. The last of the 3 songs on the record to feature MDMA, now known as Pooh Bear, coming up is a more of an uplifting track with some bouncy pianos that make it a bit more danceable. I'm honestly a bit surprised because I quite like this one. Lupe flows so smoothly on this one, and even though Pooh Bear's chorus is a bit auto-tuned, it's not nearly as intrusive or annoying as one of the other songs on here that we'll get to in a minute, and it feels like his vocal talents shine through a whole lot better here. Break the Chain sees Eric Turner, who sang the chorus to Written in the Stars, dropping a very dramatic hook over another instrumental that feels very techno-influenced, while Sway appears with a guest verse that matches the energy and passion of Lupe's verse about the prison cycle. This is the type of track I feel like I shouldn't like because it does sound like it belongs firmly in 2011, but surprisingly the elements of it come together better than they should. Now with that said, there's only so much I can enjoy about the record, and there are a lot of other forgettable cuts. I Don't Wanna Care Right Now is one of the many songs that features Pooh Bear, and it's a track that's emblematic of this album's issues. Sure, Lupe sounds great, but everything else about the song just feels like a standard pop rap relic of 2011. There are a few catchy moments, but it's just too overproduced and the techno elements are silly silly, especially on the chorus. I couldn't tell if that was Lupe or Pooh Bear singing on the chorus, but whoever it was, while they don't sound bad, that hook combined with all the bleeps and bloops just didn't feel harmonious. Pooh Bear also sings the chorus on Beautiful Lasers 2 Ways, and wow, does it kill the song. Lupe himself is dropping these dark, difficult bars about a suicide attempt, and then Pooh Bear comes in with an awfully mixed hook that is standing in a tsunami of autotune that makes it sound terrible. He absolutely could have sung this chorus without the autotune filters and everything would have been totally okay, but that hook really makes the song hard to listen to. And speaking of bad choruses, who the hell mixed Trey Songz' chorus on Out of My Head? Trey Songz is a good singer. How did you manage to make him sound so ugly? And beyond that, this is another simple, dancey love song that feels like it just popped out of a 2011 time machine. And sadly, that's not the only track that reeks thanks to a bad hook from a guest artist. State Run Radio features Matt Mahaffey of Self dropping a pretty bland, repetitive, forgettable hook over this banging, guitar-driven, rock-leaning instrumental. And honestly, more and more I was just waiting for the hook to end at several points. Lupe sounds fine on the track, but it's not nearly enough to save this from being one of the album's absolute worsts. And sadly, this thing doesn't finish much better than it started. All Black Everything is one of the most lyrically interesting songs on the record, thematically tackling the idea of what history would be like if racism and slavery never existed. I love Lupe's very bold bars as well as the suitably not poppy instrumental that kind of feels old school, but I do once again feel like the chorus is a bit clumsy at points, which kind of knocks it down just a small peg. And the closer, Never Forget You, was another one that Lupe didn't have as much to do with. Featured artist John Legend had this one sitting around and Lupe's execs sent it to him and just kind of threw him on top of it. And honestly, it kind of shows. John Legend sounds good and I like his chorus, but it does feel like Lupe couldn't be any more disconnected from this record. Sure, he flows well, but the instrumental is so basic with an emotional and poppy sound and your standard empowering lyrics about finding success. It's not mind-numbingly awful, but yeah, it certainly smells of label intrusion. Overall, Lupe Fiasco's 2011 album certainly doesn't sound much better now than it did then. Lupe is a bold, passionate lyricist, and even if a lot of his bars are controversial, I get what he's going for and why he's so respected. He has a message, he's making that message clear, and he's delivering it with a lot of passion and great performances. Sadly though, the rest of the record around him doesn't add to that. I say it all the time, but even if you're a great lyricist, there's more to music than just the writing, and this record proves that. It really helps that the project was plagued by label intrusion, but many of the instrumentals feel like forgettable relics of the electronic sound of the early 2010s. And they just aren't all that flattering to Lupe's style. Nor are the choruses, most of which are forgettable and seem to have been made solely to appeal to pop radio sounds. And in terms of the features, well, most of them either don't really contribute all that much or probably shouldn't have even been here in the first place. It's hard to tell how much of this album was truly Lupe's and how much was the labels, but at the end of the day, it's just not flattering. It's not nearly as bad as I was expecting, and its relatively shorter length does help with that, but you can see why Lupe doesn't exactly enjoy this record all that much. I didn't either. Back in 2011, I think I didn't mind The Show Goes On, but I don't know if I would have been all that into this album. Listening to it now, I could definitely say it's a disappointment, and I can see why Lupe's distanced himself from it. If I had to put a rating on it, it would probably get a bad from me. It's not the worst thing in the world, but yeah, this feels like something the label shat out more than something Lupe put passion into. But that's just my opinion on this record. What did you guys think about it? Did you listen to it back in 2011? Do you still listen to it now? Did you love it back then? Hate it back then? Do you love it now? Do you hate it now? Are you just completely indifferent towards it? And how much do you think the label fucked up with this record? Whatever your thoughts and experiences are, leave them down in the comments below. Let's keep this civil and have some fun as we like to do. If you guys want to hit like and subscribe, thank you. If not, it's no big deal. I totally understand. And if you guys want to support my passion for content creation by subscribing to my OnlyFans, where I create exclusive music review and poetry content for $4.99 a month, the link to that is also in the description. Again, I totally understand if you can't or don't want to. It's no big deal, and I appreciate anyone who is able to. And moving right along, the next album that I'm going to be talking about in 10 years later is Chris Brown's 2011 album, Fame. I feel like most of Chris Brown's 2010 albums are going to be kind of rough, so I guess I'm just going to have to hope that Fame was a rare diamond out of them. So stay tuned for that, but until next time, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.